She was the woman who shocked the world. Holly Holm didn't just beat Ronda Rousey, she dismantled a myth. For one night in 2015, she was on top of the world, the undefeated boxer turned MMA underdog who landed a head kick heard around the world. But fast forward to now, and Holly Holm's life couldn't be more different. She's no longer in the headlines. Her career has faded into the background. Her personal life has taken unexpected turns. And behind the powerful strikes and calm demeanor lies a life shaped by isolation, quiet struggles, and a kind of loneliness that money and fame can't solve. In this video, we look back at the highs, the lows, and the heartbreaking reality of Holly Holm's lifestyle now at 42 years old. Her home, her cars, her relationships, and the silence that surrounds her legacy. Long before the screaming arenas and championship belts, Holly Holm was just a quiet, athletic girl growing up in the sun-baked outskirts of Albuquerque, New Mexico. She wasn't raised in chaos or celebrity. She was raised in a church pew. Her father, Roger Holm, was a preacher at the Church of Christ, and her mother, Tammy, was a massage therapist. The values were simple: faith, humility, discipline. And from a young age, Holly embodied all three. She was the youngest of three siblings. Unlike the loud, brash personalities often found in combat sports, Holm's early years were defined by silence, reflection, and structure. Sundays were spent in church, weekdays in school, and evenings often practicing whatever sport was in season. Holm dabbled in everything: soccer, gymnastics, track, and swimming. But there was always a sense that she was different. Not louder, not flashier, just more focused. That intensity followed her into high school, where she excelled not just as an athlete, but as a student. She graduated from Manzano High School in 2000 and briefly attended the University of New Mexico. But even then, college life didn't grip her. She wanted something else, something physical, something where her body could express the discipline her soul had always known. She found it in a small gym run by Mike Winklejohn, a former kickboxer turned coach. At first, she was there just to stay in shape, but Winklejohn saw something in her: the way she moved, the way she absorbed information, and most importantly, the way she never quit. He encouraged her to pursue amateur kickboxing and then boxing. Holm, hesitant at first, agreed, and it was the beginning of a transformation no one, not even Holly, could fully understand. Her quiet life began to shift. As her training intensified, so did her reputation. People began whispering about the preacher's daughter, a nickname that followed her from the gym to the ring. It wasn't just a gimmick, it was real. She didn't curse, she didn't drink, she wasn't out partying after fights. While others chased fame, Holly chased perfection. By the early 2000s, Holm had traded the stability of small-town life for the grueling grind of combat sports. But she never abandoned her roots. She continued attending church. She still prayed before every fight. And she maintained a deep connection to her family, often thanking her father in post-fight interviews. In an industry built on flash and controversy, Holm was the quiet storm, a force of nature guided by belief, patience, and an inner fire no one could see until it exploded. While the MMA world would eventually know Holly Holm for one head kick, boxing fans remember something very different: a decade-long reign of quiet, methodical dominance. Holm wasn't just a boxer, she was a technician, a tactician, a surgeon with gloves. But for most of her boxing career, the spotlight never found her. Despite racking up titles and accolades, she remained largely in the shadows, admired by purists, ignored by the mainstream. She made her professional boxing debut in 2002 and quickly carved through her division. What made Holm unique wasn't knockout power. She didn't have it in abundance. It was her footwork, her timing, her ability to stay calm under pressure. She'd glide across the ring, throwing combinations that didn't look devastating but added up like paper cuts. By the final round, her opponents were bruised, frustrated, and defeated. Not by one shot, but by 1,000 perfectly placed ones. Between 2005 and 2013, she won multiple world championships in 3 different weight classes: light welterweight, welterweight, and light middleweight. She fought and beat top-tier opposition like Mary Jo Sanders and Christy Martin. And yet, outside of New Mexico, few people even knew her name. She defended her belts, she sold out local arenas, but the media paid little attention. Why? Because Holm didn't fit the mold. She wasn't brash, she didn't trash talk, she wasn't flashy or loud, or controversial. In a sport where headlines often matter more than hand speed, Holm's humility made her invisible. It frustrated her team. Mike Winkeljohn knew she was special, but no matter how many titles she stacked, the phone never rang from promoters offering pay-per-view slots or big national sponsors. She was a champion, but not a star. Her manager once described her as the most accomplished fighter nobody talks about. And it was true. She went 33-2-3 in professional boxing, held 18 world titles, was named Ring Magazine's Fighter of the Year. But without a gimmick, she was ignored by the very sport she gave her body to. By 2013, Holm began to feel the pull toward something new. Boxing had given her everything and taken a lot in return, but it wasn't fulfilling anymore. MMA was rising fast, and more importantly, it was giving women a stage boxing never did. So she made a choice: walk away from the world she had conquered to start over at the bottom of a new one. When Holly Holm announced her move to MMA, reactions ranged from polite curiosity to outright skepticism. In 2011, women's MMA was just beginning to find mainstream footing. Ronda Rousey was breaking barriers, but the UFC had yet to fully embrace female fighters. For Holm, it was a risky move. She was a boxing legend stepping into a world dominated by grapplers, kickboxers, and jiu-jitsu specialists. Critics were quick to dismiss her. She doesn't have a ground game. She's too old to start over. She's just a boxer trying to stay relevant. The MMA world, always hungry for fresh blood, didn't seem interested in Holm's resume. They wanted fireworks, and no one thought a quiet, methodical boxer could bring them. But Holly didn't care. She went back to basics. Every day she trained at Jackson Wink MMA Academy, one of the most elite gyms in the country. Grappling, wrestling, clinch work, submissions, she embraced it all. Her coaches praised her humility, her dedication, and her relentless work ethic. While others coasted on natural talent, Holm showed up early, stayed late, and asked questions. She was a student again. Her first few MMA fights came in smaller promotions, but the results were impressive. Holm mixed her striking with improved takedown defense and kept her opponents at bay with movement and patience. Fans started to notice. So did Dana White. By 2014, she had signed with the UFC. Her UFC debut came against Raquel Pennington in February 2015. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't dominant, but it was a win. And more importantly, it was a lesson. Holm needed time to adjust. Her next fight was another decision victory, and fans began to wonder if she truly belonged in the octagon. Then came the announcement Holly Holm would face Ronda Rousey at UFC 193 for the Women's Bantamweight Championship. It felt surreal. Rousey was the face of the sport, undefeated, untouchable, and beloved. Holm was quiet, respectful, and largely unknown outside hardcore fight circles. Odds makers had Holm as a massive underdog. The media didn't even ask if she could win, only how long she could survive. But behind the scenes, Holm was preparing for the moment that would define and ultimately trap the rest of her life. She didn't just want to win. She wanted to shock the world. On November 15, 2015, in front of more than 56,000 fans at Etihad Stadium in Melbourne, Australia, Holly Holm walked into the octagon as a plus 1,000 underdog. Ronda Rousey, the reigning queen of MMA, stood across from her, undefeated, feared, idolized. No woman FC. The media called her the most dangerous woman in the world, and no one gave Holly a chance. The build-up was lopsided. Rousey's press presence dominated. She insulted Holm's calm demeanor, shoved her at the weigh-in, told reporters that Holly was going to know what losing feels like in the worst way possible. Holly didn't react. She didn't clap back. She simply smiled and walked away. That silence spoke louder than anything. When the fight began, fans expected Rousey to steamroll Holm, but something strange happened. Holm didn't panic. She circled, stuck to her southpaw stance, picked her shots. Ronda looked wild, swinging recklessly. Holly, ever composed, kept tagging her. Jab, cross, step out, repeat. Midway through the second round, it happened. It was everything she had earned through years of hard work. But behind the scenes, the pressure started mounting. She was expected to repeat the impossible, to dominate. The spotlight that once ignored her was now blinding. Fans expected knockouts. The UFC expected pay-per-views. And Holly just wanted to stay herself. She once said in an interview, "I'm not in this to be famous. I just want to be great at what I do." But greatness, as she would soon find out, comes with a cost. After the Rousey fight, Holly Holm stood atop the MMA world, but she didn't stay there long. Her first title defense was against Miesha Tate at UFC 196 in March 2016. For 4 rounds, she dominated. Precise footwork, clean counters. Her composure never broke, but in the 5th round, Tate took her back and sunk in a rear naked choke. Holly refused to tap. She went unconscious. The belt slipped away. That loss marked the beginning of a painful slide, not just in wins and losses, but in the spotlight. Fans who once called her a hero now whispered about whether she was overrated. The same media that praised her professionalism now ignored her entirely. She had become another fallen star in a sport obsessed with whoever was winning now. Over the next few years, Holm would lose to Valentina Shevchenko, Germaine de Randamie, Chris Cyborg, and Amanda Nunes, all elite names, all in big fights. And yet, she was never outclassed. She fought valiantly, she took damage, she gave it back, but she never seemed to find her rhythm again. Each loss chipped away at the image that had once graced magazine covers. And yet, there was no scandal, no dramatic retirement speech, no viral video. Holm just kept showing up, kept training, kept fighting, even as the world stopped watching. Her coaches stood by her, praising her discipline and heart. She never missed weight, never pulled out of fights, never blamed anyone. But in the entertainment-driven machine of modern MMA, that quiet professionalism didn't sell. And without the belt, Holm became invisible again. One promoter said off the record, "Holly's just not a draw anymore." It was a brutal truth. Despite her resume, despite her legacy, Holm's name didn't generate buzz, not like Rousey's did, or Nunes. And so the UFC pushed her down the cards. Less promotion, less attention, less glory. But perhaps the most tragic part of it all, she never stopped trying. She never gave up. She never complained. She simply faded. From main events to co-mains, from sold-out arenas to half-filled ones, from the front page to the last paragraph. The woman who shocked the world was now being treated like a footnote. Even in her 40s, Holly Holm kept lacing up the gloves. While her peers retired, joined commentary booths, or chased Hollywood, Holm stayed in the gym. She continued taking fights, sometimes against top contenders, sometimes against rising names looking to build their resume off hers. She didn't duck anyone. She never asked for easy matchups, but the results and the reactions told a heartbreaking story. Her 2020 fight against Irene Aldana was a masterclass. Holm looked rejuvenated, quick, dominant, controlling every second of the match. It was the kind of performance that reminded fans of who she was. But the media coverage? Minimal. UFC didn't even promote it heavily. It aired on an ESPN Plus card tucked behind flashier names. The victories didn't bring momentum. The losses didn't spark discussion. She was existing in a space between relevance and retirement, neither celebrated nor criticized, just there. When she faced Ketlin Vieira in 2022 and lost via split decision, a decision many disagreed with, there was little outrage, few headlines, no controversy. It was just another quiet chapter in a career that had once made headlines around the world. The most painful part was that Holly Holm was still fighting well. Her conditioning remained elite. Her skills hadn't faded, but the MMA audience had. The sport had moved on fast. Fighters with louder personalities, more chaotic personal lives, and flashier highlight reels had taken over. And Holm, true to form, never changed to chase the spotlight. She didn't start beefs on Twitter. She didn't wear provocative outfits. She didn't call out champions she hadn't earned a shot at. She kept her mouth shut and her hands busy. But the sport doesn't reward dignity. It rewards noise. And Holly Holm's quiet professionalism, the very thing that made her special, made her forgettable. In an era where controversy sells more than consistency, she's still fighting, still training, still walking into the octagon with the same focus she had in 2015. But now, the arenas aren't as loud, the lights aren't as bright, and the audience isn't really watching. She once said, "The journey doesn't end with a belt. It ends when I've given everything I have." And maybe that's the most tragic part. Because she did give everything, and in return, the world stopped paying attention. Fame is loud when you win. It's deafening when you shock the world. But when the lights dim and the headlines stop, it becomes hauntingly quiet. For Holly Holm, that silence has lasted years. Despite a career that altered women's MMA forever, Holm now walks a lonely path through a sport that has largely forgotten her. There's no public meltdown to trace, no scandal to point to. There's just a strange, suffocating invisibility. She never became a pop culture figure like Ronda Rousey. She never headlined commercials like Amanda Nunes. She never built a brand off shock value like others who came after. Holm's dignity, once her greatest strength, became a barrier in an industry obsessed with virality. And as her career waned, so did the connections around her. Once surrounded by a stable of fighters at Jackson Wink MMA, Holm now trains more often in private. The gym that once housed John Jones, Diego Sanchez, and Donald Cerrone has fractured over time. Relationships faded. Drama tore at the foundation. And while Holm stayed loyal, many of her peers moved on to new coaches, new scenes, new lives. She's appeared in fewer interviews, posted less on social media, and when she does speak, it's often in a tone of quiet resignation. In a 2023 interview, she was asked if she still felt recognized for her Rousey victory. Her response was heartbreaking in its honesty. "I think people remember, but only for that. They don't really remember anything after." She is treated like a one-hit wonder in a sport where she fought world champions across multiple weight classes, transitioned from boxing to MMA when no one believed in her, and held herself to a higher standard every step of the way. But outside of Albuquerque, few people truly know what Holly gave to the game, or what it cost her. There's an eerie contrast between her quiet present and her explosive past. In the octagon, she was fierce, focused, commanding, but outside it, she's become a ghost, a relic, a woman who changed history and was then asked to quietly leave the stage so others could bask in the spotlight she helped build. She once stood atop the world. Now she walks alone through the wreckage of what used to be. Holly Holm is not broke. She's not bankrupt. She hasn't spiraled into addiction or infamy like so many other fighters. But the tragedy of her lifestyle now doesn't come from financial ruin. It comes from the eerie emptiness of a life that should feel full. She still lives in Albuquerque, not far from the gym that shaped her. Her house is modest by celebrity standards, a beautiful Southwestern-style home tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. There's no giant gate, no fleet of exotic cars in the driveway, just a well-kept home, a truck in the garage, and the occasional sighting of her heading to train. She drives a white Toyota Tacoma, reliable, efficient, and unassuming. Occasionally, she's seen in a Ford SUV. No flashy Lamborghinis, no endorsements with luxury car brands. For a woman who once headlined the biggest UFC pay-per-view in history, her lifestyle remains grounded, almost hauntingly so. There's a sadness in that simplicity. She had the world at her feet, but she never cashed it in. In 2012, Holm married Jeff Kirkpatrick, a fellow New Mexico native. Their relationship was quiet, like everything else in her life. But by 2019, they had quietly divorced. There was no scandal, no media blitz, just a court document and a mutual agreement to go their separate ways. They had no children, no public custody battle, just two people who quietly drifted apart. Since then, Holm has not remarried. She has no children. Her personal life remains a closed book. And while that may be her choice, it paints a picture of a woman who gave so much of herself to fighting that there may not have been much left for anything else. She wakes up early, trains alone, prepares for fights that fewer and fewer people watch, and then returns home, alone. No reality show cameras, no luxury lifestyle brand, just quiet. Even her business ventures are small scale. She's invested in local Albuquerque businesses, made appearances for local charities, but the million-dollar sponsorships, they never came, and they're not coming now. There's something deeply tragic about watching watching someone live below the level they once earned, not because they lost it, but because they never sought it in the first place. Holm could have sold her soul for fame, for attention, for a brand. She didn't, and now she pays the price. Holly Holm changed the game. That isn't opinion. It's historical fact. Without her, the myth of Ronda Rousey may have continued unchecked. Without her, the UFC may not have embraced the depth of female talent that followed. Without her, millions of fans might never have believed in an underdog again. And yet, here she is at 42 years old, forgotten. She still shows up to fight, still shows up to train, still treats every opponent with respect, still lives simply, drives modestly, and walks through life with humility. And yet, the cameras don't follow her. The headlines don't include her. Her name doesn't appear in GOAT lists, or dream fight discussions, or even promotional materials. It's a quiet fall, not a loud one. No public disgrace, no criminal record, no scandalous affair, just a slow, invisible slide into obscurity, one that feels almost crueler than a tabloid meltdown. Because Holm did everything right. She stayed clean, she stayed honest, she stayed respectful. And still, she was left behind. She once said, "I'm okay being in the background. I've always been in the background." But that background has grown colder with time. There's no statue for her, no banner hanging in the UFC apex, no consistent commentary about her legacy. And yet, what she did, knocking out the most hyped fighter in MMA history with precision, class, and calm, will never be forgotten by those who truly watched. The tragedy isn't that she fell from fame, it's that fame never truly embraced her. She was too humble, too disciplined, too respectful. And in this world, sometimes that's not what the audience wants. Holly Holm still walks with her head high, but behind that smile, there's a silence. The kind that only comes when you've done everything right and still end up walking alone.